Capitol is going to rue the day that they took out these children. Please laugh at my joke.
So you're telling me the dude from iCarly who's
Shut
like,
the fuck up.
"You'll rue the day."
I knew this
that
would
he
happen.
has a point.
Penny didn't like that.
He's not
Penny
gonna rue the day. Alrighty, guys, welcome back to Cinema Pursuit. This week we have a great episode. My name's Vikash, and I don't have a co-host today. Zach is here, but he's producing. I do have a great guest, though, returning again. Catie, our podcast producer, friend, Zach's wife, everything above. She's here today. Say hi.
Hey, everybody. I'm here full time today.
Yeah, and it's more than full time. I think we're kind of going hard in the paint today. Today, we are talking about the 2013 franchise movie, Hunger Games Catching Fire. We're going to talk about Hunger Games 1, Hunger Games Catching Fire, Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, and Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, along with all those books. So this is just a full spoiler warning. This is for the fans. And because the new movie came out, I wouldn't call myself a fan till like about a month ago. Like, I had this revitalized love for these movies, and I think Kat has a little bit more than me. So, Kat, what are your memories of Hunger Games?
So when I was in middle school, a few of my friends started reading the Hunger Games series, and they kept telling me, you have to read it, you have to read it. So this was the book outside of Harry Potter that started me into reading. So this is a really important series to me as a bookworm. And for the movie, it came out the weekend of my 14th birthday, and I vividly remember it because I got my first period the day before. Welcome to the life of a 14-year-old girl.
So that means that you were getting hit with all the good memories. Like, this
Fantastic.
is like I remember, so I saw the first movie. I remember telling Zach, like, I was like in middle school, like a few years before, I was like, oh yeah, they're going to make this into a movie. You should read these books. I read like 60 pages of the first book. I returned it so Zach could get it, and I was like, I'm not about to read this. I wasn't ready for it. Honestly, that's what it meant. Because I respected what I wrote, what Suzanne Collins wrote, what I read, I actually liked, and I told him to read it. He read all. I think he read a lot of the books. At least two of them, if I remember correctly.
I'm not dead. I can pop in if you want to ask me. I did.
We don't need
I
you
read
here.
the entire series. I just these movies I like, but they're not like my favorite, so which is why I'm not on here. I will say Vikash not only was the one who got me on the Hunger Games, he also tried to get me on Twilight. But obviously, we're not recording a podcast on Twilight.
We're not talking about Twilight today, Zachary.
We'll let y'all.
So
you two can do Twilight.
Go back
school,
to producing.
Middle school, I was reading Percy Jackson, Hunger Games a little bit, and Twilight. And I enjoyed it all. I really did. I used to be a bookworm. I need to get back to it. But I remember for Hunger Games 1, going to the theater. First of all, I went with my brother and his friends, and someone was late, and we were rushing to the movie. It was past the trailers. And we walked into the theater, and me and the other girl that was with us, we walked into a wall, like straight into a wall in the dark, and the movie's already playing. So I'm stressed, and I'm having like a horrific moment. And like we didn't know where the seats were and like all sorts of stuff. But I remember watching the Hunger Games too in theaters. How was it for you in the theater, Kat?
So the first one in the theater was great. I don't believe I watched the other movies in the theater.
Oh, wow.
We were kind of broke at the time, so I only got to see some movies in the theaters. I got to see Hunger Games because it was my birthday weekend, and in lieu of a birthday party, I got to go see the movie with my friends and have a bunch of popcorn and all the treats. So it was actually really good, but I got to watch Catching Fire and Mockingjay Parts 1 and 2 at home, and so it wasn't such a vivid memory, but I really enjoyed it, and like any bookworm, I had issues with the adaptations, but I'm an adult, I can get past it, it's okay.
I can relate this year because this year for my birthday, all three of us actually went and did Barbenheimer. We did Barbie and Oppenheimer because they dropped on my birthday. So I'm a very big go to the movies person as, a birthday thing, but I understand. It's like, it's all the vibes.
We had a lot of fun this year.
Yeah, we did. It's been a busy, tiring year, but for you, so how many times have you seen Hunger Games? So Catching Fire and like Mockingjay Part 1 and 2?
Hunger Games, I don't know how many times, probably about 10 between my rewatches when I was in middle school. I was a big fan, so I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
Catching Fire, probably closer to under 5. In Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, I think I only watched one other time before now. So this was my second time. I watched the whole series. I reread all the books. And when Ballad was released, I read the book and went to the movie the same night that I finished it. So I'm all fresh and ready for this episode.
Yeah. Okay, I remember this conversation now. Okay.
Listen.
Because so just from my perspective, I watched Ballad this year, Ballad of Songbirds and Snake, pretty much without zero context besides like one trailer, and the movie just hit me like a bag of bricks. It was fantastic to me. Like, it's one of my like lower top 10, but like one of my favorite like movies that came out this year. I think it's a very interesting picture. But for me, when it came to Hunger Games versus Catching Fire, like that's where the juice was for me. Because I didn't watch Mockingjay 1 or 2 till this recent week. But when it came to Catching Fire, I saw it once, and then I went back again and saw it in IMAX. And I wasn't a big fan of this franchise, but I was a fan of Jennifer Lawrence and about every other person on screen.
Stacked cast.
It was awesome. I loved it. Like, watching this movie is a top 10 experience. Not top 10. Yes, let's say top 10 experience in the theater. Like, it was that good to me. I'm being genuine. There's a moment. We're going to talk about why.
Oh, yeah.
But for you, Kat, we can talk about Hunger Games first. When it comes to books versus the movies, there's always an issue. What did they do right on the Hunger Games movie? And don't tell me it was the directing.
No, we don't need to talk about the shaky cam and how painful that was.
We'll talk about it, because my thing is that Gary Ross has ruined 2 different pictures where they're female, like women-led things. He came in as a man, directed them, and they were not that good. They should have been better. Like, he's the one who was pulling them down. But Kat, give me thoughts.
So Hunger Games actually, when you think about how adaptations have worked when it comes to especially the dystopian YA books and such, Hunger Games does a very good job at adapting. My dog just yawned. I'm so sorry. Hunger Games does a very good job. No, it was Penny.
Oh, it's Penny. Okay.
Yeah, she's next to me. Hunger Games does a really good job of adapting the story for the screen. And there are some little details that I really appreciate on screen. They take Katniss's internal dialogue and thoughts, because this book is in first person. And instead of having you lost in the weeds of what she might be thinking, they have Caesar Flickerman and the other host. I can't remember his name right now, but they have the 2 hosts.
You're talking about Dobby? The other guy, he plays Dobby, Cat.
Yeah, I can't remember his
Tucci
character
Gang,
name
Stanley,
right now.
Stanley is fantastic.
He's great. But they have the 2 hosts of the games, or of the commentary for the games, talking through what might be going on in the games, what her plan might be. And that allows you to consider what she might be thinking and get into her headspace, which is really helpful.
You mentioned that in terms of like YA dystopian adaptions, that this is one of the ones that's really good to you. Why do you think it is that, let's see, Maze Runner, Divergent, Percy Jackson, there's so many franchises that came after Harry Potter, and this is the only one that was actually successful, even after all, like, what has it been, like 8 years? They made another one and it's still great. What do you why do you think that is?
I think the story is easier to put on the screen than some of the other plot lines, details, concepts. Hunger Games is very active, so you can make it more of an action movie, while a lot of these others are more political drama. Percy Jackson's very active, so we'll see how the TV show goes.
They just dropped today.
You and I will watch that, and we will talk about that, but...
As for me, I think Hunger Games comes off more than like the usual YA stuff. I think it comes off as science fiction for me. I feel like there's very real undertones to everything that they do in these films. It doesn't feel like it's like off the ground in any way. When the serious notes hit within all these films, they really tug at your heartstrings, and you feel something every single time something happens And I don't think that's typically how it works. And like, if you watch like a Maze Runner or something like that, I didn't even watch Divergent. Like after I watched Catching Fire, I was like, I think they've peaked. I don't think they're going to hit this again. And I think they haven't hit it again since, have they?
No, I think I watched Divergent in the theaters, and I did not watch any of the
Did you
other
read the
movies
books?
because I was so pissed off with it.
Yeah.
No, I watched it when
Oh.
it came out. I was a Divergent fan when I was a kid. I read the series only once, but it was really interesting. Really
Okay, that's
recommend
good to
it to
hear.
any teenagers and young adult readers that are into this kind of dystopian world concept. But the movie was crap.
See, that's the thing. It's like everything should be story over everything. And obviously they messed up the story with that, didn't they?
Yeah. It's unfortunate because I feel like that could have been transcribed to the screen well too, but they might have rushed it. I don't know enough about how that movie played out to comment too heavily on it, but Hunger Games clearly succeeded when Divergent and Maze Runner and other series did not.
Okay, so let's hit Hunger Games real quick right before we get into Catching Fire. Are there any details that you really loved through Hunger Games itself? Are there any details that you really loved, or is there anything where you were kind of salty about it? Let me know. Let me know both.
So I really appreciate how there's some little details that they include in the games, such as Katniss handling this lovely little butterfly after the cannons go off, signifying the death of several tributes. Butterflies are drawn to death and dead things. It's a nice little detail that people might not pick up on unless they understand that, like, natural concept of butterflies.
I've got a degree in biology, and I don't even know that.
Dude, I only know it because Lore Olympus and the fans are really in depth on that. Highly recommend Lore Olympus as well.
We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it.
I'm not getting into anything.
I kind of want to know about it. I've heard
You would
I've heard
enjoy
so
it.
much.
You would enjoy it. But in addition to that, while I really like that detail, something I'm not a fan of is how they changed the outfits that they wear to the games from what it was in the book. I only am mad because as a teenager, I did a casual little cosplay of Hunger Games Katniss over here going into the arena in her green shirt and her khaki pants.
So it wasn't like she wasn't like wearing a rain jacket or anything?
She got a jacket, but she had more of like a green and khaki vibe, at least from what I remember and from what I read. And then in the movie, you get this really cool uniform that everyone matches in. I was really mad because I wore that cosplay to the theater.
It was corny. It was corny. Yeah.
I dressed up for the movie and I didn't even match.
Everyone's like, what's this girl wearing? Who is this girl?
Oh, I braided my hair and everything. I had the pin. Oh, I was such a loser.
We're gonna cut in a photo of this.
Yeah.
Whatever we post
I have
this.
a
I gotta see
photo.
this photo. I gotta see the photos.
I have a photo. You can put it in the TikToks and such. Yeah. One of the other details I really appreciate in the movie is when they're about to eat the berries at the end of the games, Peeta touches Katniss's braid as they're counting down to eat the berries. And Katniss looks towards the sky, towards her family, the capital, the world. And Peeta looks at her. And it's just such a symbolic positioning, and whoever directed that scene and choreographed that idea knew what they were doing, because it's a nice little detail and it really shows through body language priorities, and I really like that in the Hunger Games.
Yeah, no, that's just a great lesson in blocking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of my favorite lines is from Catching Fire is Haymitch telling Katniss is like in 100 lives you wouldn't deserve Peeta.
Oh, and she knows it.
I mean, it's kind of a joke, and it's like, I mean, it hits right though. By the end of this series, it hits perfectly.
Mm-hmm. They earn each other at the end, but at the beginning, she does not deserve this man. This boy,
Yeah.
He's a child. They're children. Can I just say that? They're children. This is sad.
Wait, so how old are they in the books?
About
Because they don't really
15,
tell you how old they
16.
are. They're 15 and 16.
They're about 15 to 16 years old. In Catching Fire, they're 17.
In Hollywood, they're just aging them up, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, but yeah, because it is some serious stuff that they go through. That's
is.
some traumatic stuff.
They just never really state the ages, but yeah, these are kids. These are teenagers. Some of the stuff that you hear about in the books is kind of icky for what they're dealing with, but I'm not going to touch on that. If people want to talk to me about the books, go ahead and reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk about the Hunger Games series.
I think it's interesting. It's like whenever it comes to a book, whenever it comes to like someone's life, I think that making movies is kind of the worst adaptation possible.
Yeah.
Especially in the space that we have now. What do you think? Hunger Games miniseries would have worked better, right?
100%. You could have done a limited series.
Yeah, that would have been awesome to see.
Okay.
And you're gonna like I think you're gonna like my recasts. Okay.
I'm
think you're really
excited.
gonna like them. But let's get into Catching Fire now. Okay, Kat. So Catching Fire, memories. Why do you have any memories for Catching Fire itself?
Not specifically, other than sitting there and thinking it was the best book in the series, the best movie out of the series. It has a full, well-rounded plot with it has the romance, it has the political element, it has rebellion, it has the games. There's so many different aspects that feed into this one book and movie that it makes it the best out of the series. It contains everything. How could it not be?
I think what you're talking about, I think with the first two films, there's a stark juxtaposition between some very serious topics and then very playful stuff, where it's like even the playful stuff is serious, where it's like, Flickerman on TV doing the snazzy stuff, and they're getting dressed up and going to the governor's house to this, this party, but it's still serious, but there's also this playfulness to it.
Yep.
And I think afterwards, when it gets to like Mockingjay, that's kind of not there. It's very serious. But I think when it comes to these movies, there's a reason why they were successful, but specifically Catching Fire, more so than Hunger Games 1 and then Mockingjay Part 1 and 2. This was the movie where they had fun, a little bit of fun,
Yep.
and then a lot of serious, and it comes all together extremely well. And I think they replicated a bit in Ballad, but not as great as Catching Fire.
100%. I agree. And plus, the cinematography gets a lot better in Catching Fire. And there's other emotional details.
Talk about it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. There's other emotional details that are really good in this movie. I'm only going to mention one because I'm not planning on mentioning it later. What I really like is that we get to see PETA's painting of Rue that he does during the evaluation with the game makers. In the books, you don't get to see that. The game makers take about 45 minutes to an hour trying to clean up what he painted, so then you don't have to see it. Katniss doesn't see anything, so she only hears about it later from PETA. But for the movie, it makes total sense why we would see it. It's a movie.
Oh yeah,
it's a visual.
You gotta show it.
And it's beautiful, and they do such an amazing job at portraying the emotion and how important Rue was in that one image painting.
Amanda Stenberg, she's blown up as an actress, and what they did with Hunger Games 1, I think if Collins didn't have Rue's character in the first movie, I definitely would not have liked it as much as I did.
You need Rue's character.
When I think there's something like Rue is the only person of color. She's the only, I think in Catching Fire and in Hunger Games 1, she's the only, person of color that actually gets like consistent screen time and has a story for herself.
Yeah.
And that it goes back to what happens in Catching Fire. I think that Catching Fire is one of those movies where the PG-13 is pushed to the limit, to the brink.
Absolutely.
And I'm talking about Christopher Nolan level. They're showing a guy peacefully protesting, and then they bring him up, an older gentleman, and he literally gets shot. And they drag him away. They show all of it without the blood. They do it, quote unquote, tastefully. And that hits so seriously. Usually they wouldn't do that in a PG-13 movie. They'd just say cut it out, or show a photo or something like that.
I'm glad that they didn't cut it out.
Actually trying to do that.
In the books, you don't see the man get shot because Katniss is dragged away. But you hear through the door, and you hear several gunshots. They're killing several people who showed support to Katniss and PETA. But in the movie, it's more meaningful and a stronger message to show the man getting shot. And it's really heartbreaking and devastating. Yeah. What I want to add is that Rue is named a little too obviously. The Capitol is going to rue the day that they took out these children. Please laugh at my joke.
So you're telling me the dude from iCarly, who's
Shut
like,
the fuck up.
"You rule the day."
I knew this would happen.
That he has a point.
Penny didn't like that.
Penny didn't rule the day.
I know.
Okay.
I know. I thought about it too. Okay. Yeah. I thought about it too.
You're gonna rue the day.
It's true. I hate it. I hate that I had to mention it.
I was just thinking, I never thought of how obvious that is, but then I was thinking about it too. You remember how in Star Wars, how they like name Palpatine Dark Plagueis or whatever? And it's like, or he's talking about
Yeah.
the tale of Dark Plagueis, and it's like, oh yeah, plague, yeah, Darth, like dark, yeah. Oh, really hit the nail on the head there, George. Okay, sorry.
If you didn't notice, a lot of stuff made for a slightly younger audience, not like kids per se, but
Yeah.
teenagers, they put names a little on the nose.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It helps them understand.
Oh, I know. I mean, you could be like J.K. Rowling and make it offensive
I was
as hell.
thinking about that.
It's at least names like Pavarti Patil, Cho Chang.
Yeah.
Jeez, like, can you make better names for people of color, Joanne? Like,
Yeah.
turf
Yeah.
bullshit.
Listen,
swear
I
to
agree.
God.
It's a
At
problem.
least George Lucas never did that. Okay, I'm leaving now.
We don't support turfs here.
George Lucas was a real one. That's why. He's still a real one. Alrighty then, Kat. Let's get to it. Action is a juice. There's so much juice in Catching Fire. Juice on juice on juice. Give me your action of the juice scene for this film.
Can I have
And
two?
honestly, Kat, I'm gonna give you 2. You can get 5 if you want. Just give me the juice.
I will not give you 5. I will give you 2. So I'm going to go chronologically. First off, we have Joanna's naked elevator scene. This scene is extremely funny. The idea behind it in the story, in the books at least, is that Joanna and the other victors are teasing Katniss. So they're making fun of her for being so naive and sensitive to PDA and nudity in the first game. So Chaff kisses her. Joanna gets naked in the elevator. And you know what? They did it perfectly in the movie. I love the facial reactions. Katniss has this insane look of annoyance and displeasure. She just looks to the side at Peeta all pissed. And Peeta is calm and polite. And as soon as he sees her boobs, he's in awe. Fantastic. And Haymitch is just amused. He looks at Katniss. He's finding it hilarious. And he just thanks Joanna for the elevator ride. And I love it. It keeps it lighthearted in the situation. And fun fact, that was in one of the Dragon Con hotels in Atlanta.
Yeah, so that hotel, they actually shoot a Loki. There's a part of Loki that's
Yep.
actually shot there too. But yeah, it's a lot of there's a lot of Atlanta work in this movie, and it's become even more rampant now. But that scene right there, the way that they play it with just one take, and
Yup.
everybody's framed perfectly, and the conversation is like perfectly paced, and like you said, the exchange of like the eyes of everybody,
It's so funny.
it is hilariously perfect. It is so funny.
I love it.
And I know you haven't seen Charlie's Angels, but
Mm-hmm.
what Jenna Malone does as Joanna in that one scene is what Kristen Stewart does that entire movie.
Listen, I want to see that movie.
And it's some
Get my
BDE.
husband on board.
It is BDE. It is so much BDE. Off the chain. I love Joanna.
Go ahead, Zach.
I just want to say for 14 or 15-year-old Zach, that scene had a lot of juice.
Oh,
but
dude.
For a lot of different reasons.
I thought she
Okay,
was hot shit. I didn't understand what it was to be queer at the time, but dude, I thought she was hot shit. I was into her without realizing it. Fantastic.
Agreed. Preaching to the choir. Okay, I'm backing
Yeah,
out.
I think Jenna Malone. I don't know how she got cast in this one, but she was fantastic what she does in this film.
She's great. She's a perfect Joanna. I would
Yeah.
never recast her.
I
Okay.
think I think she's one of the best cast people in the entire movie, and this is a extremely well cast movie.
Absolutely.
Okay, so action is a juice. Scene 2. What is it, Kat?
I have a more serious action scene. It's the poisonous fog that comes out of the forest.
So real quick before you start with the poisonous fog,
Yeah.
I was watching this movie and the fog came up and I was like, this is like one of the few times that like fog has actually been done properly, and it feels like you can tell it's CG, but like the CG doesn't really look that bad.
Yeah.
And it is really intense.
Oh, 100%.
Why do you love this scene so much? Because I see the love. I loved it too.
I really like this scene because I feel like it's the beginning of the games, even though we're already half a day in. Peeta has already gotten electrocuted on the force field, and now there's this ominous chase with this intense fog, a tangible but not human or living being. It has this really strong horror element, and the way that they use sound and score and the lack of score really feeds into the energy. It is the beginning of the games, not between these victors that are now tributes again, but between the victors and the game makers. They're making it extremely obvious that they're trying to just kill everyone in the games. And we lose
Plutarch,
Mags.
played by,
Sad.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
But Plutarch, played by the amazing Philip Seymour Hoffman. He came through on one of his last roles ever with Catching Fire, Mockingjay, playing him. And he mentions to Katniss, is like, I think it's you then. You're the reason why I came back. And as you're watching that movie, you're like, this dude is ruthless. What you're talking about, the scene in the fog, in the forest, it is the first round of unrelenting horror that you see.
Absolutely.
Because we were just talking about Joanna. Joanna comes out of the forest. Literally, I don't know how they got this pass with the MPAA, but she's literally covered in blood.
Yeah.
Blood rain.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that they got to mention it. And it just the thought of that horrifies me. I know you haven't seen Nope, but blood rain is straight nightmares.
That's terrifying. I am happy that Katniss does not end up in the blood rain in the books, because I probably would have cried. And not in the way that I cried from this book.
And it was intense. Like, when I think the effects, like the special effects that they had with like whatever the poison stuff that they were getting.
Oh, yeah.
It just looked disgusting.
It was gross.
Like, it looked
was
intense. It looks real.
Real. Oh, yeah.
I loved it. It's messed up, but yes, I love that scene. It's awesome.
Like
But
I said
it's
about
like
this
you
movie.
get everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like one of those scenes where it's like, yes, this is exactly what, the Hunger Games is. I mean, the Hunger Games itself, this in Catching Fire is kind of a perfect encapsulation of what they're trying to do with this entire story to me.
Exactly.
But we'll get to that.
No, I 100% agree. That's why I love this scene, because you get pretty much the gist of the situation in just a couple minutes. I have the link saved on my notes, and I think it was about 6 to 8 minutes long for right before and right after the scene, and it's quick. This is a 2 hour and 26 minute movie.
I will tell you, this is the scene. You mentioned this scene, the photography, the IMAX photography for this movie, for this specific scene is fantastic. I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, did they shoot nights in Hawaii in the forest making this? Because it looks amazing.
It's
like,
incredible.
This scene, there's a single, they do a single where they're just showing the forest and you just hear the like you said, great sound design. You just hear like the crickets essentially in the jungle, and I was just in awe of this like random shot. I'm like, yeah, that's how you know you're watching great cinematography.
I love it. Give me all the B-roll in IMAX.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give you 2 scenes too.
Okay.
My first scene for Action of the Juice is gonna be it's the first act of the film, where they go on their first sort of trip, where they have to go and parade around as new victors on their way to the capital.
Yep.
And they get to District 11, if I'm correct. That's where Rue is from.
Yes.
And they have the tribute for Rue there, where PETA promises prize money that he technically can't, and the emotional tension for rebellion starts there. They crescendo it up. They're going by on the train, and you see the Mockingjay symbol in the in a railway or something like that.
Yeah,
and
one of the tunnels.
It's just coming up, and when you get to that scene, and the old man gets up and he does the three, he whistles and does the 3 fingers, the salute.
Yep.
And like I said before, when they pull him out and they literally execute him, they're going after these people, trying to stop a real revolution from happening. These acts, this scene itself feels so real, because I could see this happening on a bad day in humanity. This could very much happen, and it's probably happening in more ways than others in this world right now.
I completely agree.
Did you have any thoughts on that scene, Kat?
It was such an emotionally heavy scene, because that is where, if you're a young adult or a teenager watching this movie, that might be one of your first few introductions to such a serious topic, and you'll rarely see stuff like that in a PG-13 film. So witnessing the man get shot and executed, it's rough.
Have you seen X-Men?
The one with J-Lo?
So no. Actually, that's the first movie that I saw her in, that and
Me
Winter's
too.
Bone. And I saw those 2 movies, and I was like, oh, I have to go see Hunger Games because of Jennifer Lawrence. And okay,
I
but
just remember a naked
in the
blue
2000
lady.
X-Men, we're not going to talk about that.
On brand.
Respectfully. Okay, but so in the 2000s film, they opened the movie with a scene at a in Germany, in Nazi Germany, and they're like dividing up families, and Magneto's one of the kids there. And it's a very emotional scene where it's like, I saw this as a kid. I didn't know the context. And obviously now I know the context, the gravity that it brings. That scene is, there's the themes are a bit different, but it's very much one of those sorts of scenes where it's like, you never forget it if you see this as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And my second scene is, surprisingly, the juice for this scene is a bit different. I think it's got some themes to it, but it's like, it's incredibly, incredibly intense. It's a scene where Katniss comes back to District 12, and this is before the Court of Quell is actually announced. She is just there, and Plutarch and Snow, they talk about like, we gotta go and take what little these people have.
Yep.
And even Snow mentions, he's like, it's like any hope is not good, because hope is what's gonna help humanity get through no matter whatever bad thing is happening in this world. So they come to District 12 with their military vehicles, and they start closing up all the shops and doing all this bad stuff to people, throwing all their stuff outside. And then who's the
Gale.
who's the himbo cat?
Gale, Peeta, Finnick.
Gale. Wait, Gale. What's his name? No, cat. What's his name? What's the himbo's name?
Sam Cobb.
Liam Hemsworth.
Oh, Liam Hemsworth. I'm sorry, I'm still on Finnick. He is a himbo.
So with Katniss, the only person that she knew out of all the Court of Quell people was Sam Claflin's character. It was only Finnick that she knew, right? I was like, oh, she knows him for a reason, right?
In the book, she knows more, but yeah.
Ooh, okay, but Gale. Wait,
Gale gets whipped.
What was his name?
Gale? Liam Hemsworth. Hemsworth.
So Gale gets whipped, and the guy that's the commander that comes there.
Yep.
His name, I forgot his first name. Dispirit is his last name. That actor. He's on this propaganda show, SWAT. He's fantastic on that show. But the scene that he comes in for, that whipping, and then Katniss getting in the way, Peeta coming, Haymitch coming, and then Plutarch and Snow watching from the cameras. And everything, all the drama around that, including, literally the guy just like dripping the blood off the whip. Oh. I'm like, it is so intense. It is so good.
It's rough.
And it sets everything right. It's literally, you see how everybody's literally getting in the way. Who is in the way? Katniss wants to be with Gale kind of at that moment. But then Peeta gets in the way. Haymitch and essentially the rest of the world gets in the way, right? And then you have, they have their own drama. And then you see the other people who are trying to bring drama, which is Snow, right?
Oh, yeah. It is such an intense scene. And it is played very well for the screen. In the book, Gale...
his name's Patrick Dispirit.
Yep.
Fantastic actor.
He does a great job.
The dude
I
gives
hate
off,
him. He's fantastic.
Right? I love it. See, and that voice, the voice that he uses is just his real voice.
Are you
the
serious?
Dude just sounds intense. Fantastic casting.
I love that.
And it's like these old white dudes know how to be used proproperly. That's all I'm gonna say about that. I loved it.
He knows what he's doing. It's such a heavy scene.
And then they bring her
great.
And then they bring him back to drag Katniss away.
Yep.
When they announce Katniss, they're like, I want to say bye. And then he's the one dragging her away, right? That's how you know the dude was really good. Because it's like, he's the embodiment of the villainy that is present right now in District 12, right?
He
awesome
is
stuff.
the new head peacekeeper. He's replacing the old one that was shitty in a different way, but not nearly as violent. And now Gale's getting whipped for standing up for people. I think that's what it is in the movie. In the book, he's whipped for hunting a turkey. And he claims that it got over the fence. He usually would sell it to the head peacekeeper, but the head peacekeeper magically got swapped out overnight because Snow placed in a new guy.
They show it right. They did everything right.
It's insane.
Yeah. And I think what Suzanne Collins is showing with the peacekeepers is perfect. That the people that are going to be inciting this sort of dehumanizing stuff through whatever system that they're working in this case, they're working for the Capitol, and what they do and how they benefit from the people that they're working for and the people that they're supposed to be inciting terror upon is always interesting, right?
Oh yeah.
Very real life stuff.
Unfortunately.
Sadly, but we will end this with a positive note.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay, Kat. Kat, I've been waiting for this. Production value! Kat, what is your production value moment or scene in Catching Fire?
I don't think it's any surprise that I would pick the scene of PETA holding the morphling in the ocean with Katniss at sunrise. The morphling's dying, and you're watching this beautiful sunrise in the arena, which is Hawaii. And you just get this incredible, beautiful shot. And it is what you would see in one of those Tumblr reposts. Oh, I saw this all over Tumblr in middle school. You would see it on Tumblr. You'd see it on people's wallpapers. This is an incredible shot. And I just love the whole meaning behind it, because in the book, this encounter, it doesn't happen at sunrise. It happens hours before dawn. And instead of showing this person this beautiful sunrise as the last thing before they die, PETA describes how he mixes his paints because he's a painter, and he's seen this person playing with the paints back at the training center, and they bond for a moment as they're dying. And that doesn't transcribe to film very well. You get this incredible shot instead. And this is one of the adaptation changes that I love. They just embraced their location and said, hell yeah, we're taking Hawaii for all it's worth, and we're going to get this incredible shot.
But I think it comes back to the script that
Yep.
they had the line where he's trying to be friends with Katniss as they're going on this reunion tour or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "What's your favorite color?" And then she almost asks him back as like just as a courtesy, like, "What's your favorite color?" And he says the sunrise. And I think Katniss and PETA both have moments throughout the film where a different person would do something else. Katniss, instead of training, when she gets to, the Cortiquel stuff, she goes inside, she's talking to different people, and like she's like, "Oh, like you make this and I'll show you how to do this."
Yep.
Instead of, bucking up and fighting, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love those moments. Those are actual genuine character moments where you get to see that these people are like, people matter. This system of like
Yep.
messed up Hunger Games vibes is terrible, and they don't let that stop them from being human beings.
PETA is the most beautiful character, and his character arc is so sad, and it works for the story. But he is the most compassionate and human character in this whole series. And like Haymitch said, Katniss will never deserve him. And that is not a diss on our homegirl here. That is just a recognition of how valuable.
That's just how life is.
PETA
It's like, and it's like you can't even blame her. Like, you look at her life, you see how much Katniss is going through, and in every single way, it is nothing short of intense. And she's trying to vie for different things in her life, and some things she gets, some things she doesn't, and it's messy. Life is messy. Colin shows that well, right?
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to add a little recognition to Katniss getting lifted up by the hovercraft at the end. I thought that was an incredible shot as well. I didn't want to leave that unrecognized.
So you talk about one shot.
You talk about them all.
IMAX. I know you're watching IMAX. IMAX, come sponsor me. Come sponsor
Please.
our podcast. Because
Please do.
Catching Fire has some of the greatest IMAX photography ever put to film. Joe Willems, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correct. This is the last movie that Francis Lawrence and Joe shot on film, because they transitioned into digital for Mockingjay and everything else they've done since. And this movie, the photography when they get into the arena itself for the Hunger Games, when Cinna gets hit, the tension is there, right? And then the camera goes in and it's revolving around. And then as they're revolving around, the IMAX frame opens up, the aspect ratio changes through that tension, through that like traumatic moment. And it is one of the best IMAX transitions I've ever seen. I remember seeing it in the theater and just loving it. And on top of that, they shot IMAX film, and this film looks amazing at every turn. Kat talks about the moment at the beach, but for me it's everything. Whether they're running through the forest,
Everything.
whether they're doing any sort of action thing, they went hard in the paint. They used I feel like they used their budget to make the IMAX look amazing. And it looks so different compared to what they did with the first Hunger Games movie, whether that's budget, DP, director, whatever it was. This one looks vastly better at every single, action-y moment or character moment throughout the entire film, but especially the IMAX stuff. IMAX, man. IMAX is amazing. And even watching the Blu-ray copy with the IMAX, still stunning. Still so good.
Vikash, do you think this is the best use of IMAX in a movie?
This is the best use of IMAX outside of Nolan. IMAX film, because there's a lot of people they're making cameras now that are digital shot for IMAX cameras now that have bigger sensors, and IMAX works with different directors and stuff to do the color theory and all that sort of stuff for their projection and all that. But even then, the IMAX film itself does not compare to anything else. And I'm talking about all three of us. We went to go see Oppenheimer this year in IMAX, and just a simple shot of Oppenheimer just walking around at the base with his cigar, and you just see the little focus, and you see the grain, and then you see the dust in the air and it's I've never seen anything look more amazing than that. And IMAX film is the highest quality that I've ever seen, and Hunger Games does it amazingly, Zach.
It does, and I like that it does it in a very obvious way, but that doesn't detract, or it's not corny or anything like that. It's you're going into the Hunger Games, everything just got real. Let us blow up the screen so this is important.
But I'm talking about if it's they're sitting on the beach, it looks amazing, in the sand. When they're having the chase scene that Kat spoke about, where they're getting chased by this fog, they have cable cams or something running through the forest, even all that stuff looks amazing. All of it looks so well done, and you can feel the love behind all of that. And they have CG within these scenes, but even then, the CG looks amazing too. And it feels like every single part of this was captured perfectly by the IMAX cameras, and they did it well. And I just love seeing great IMAX film, man. And I hope that IMAX keeps shooting, they keep letting people shoot on film. I know it's hard and the cameras are loud and all this stuff, but the film looks so much better than anything else that's being put out there. And there's so much great work being done out there.
I love whenever I see something.
It's not an IMAX. It's not a digital versus film thing.
Yep.
It's just the film looks great. The stock looks good. There's a reason why Nolan went and selected this into being something that they use in blockbuster filmmaking.
Oh, yeah. I love IMAX film, and they really do a great job of utilizing it for this movie, as well as plenty of other movies. I think I really appreciate that you can actually see the night scenes, too. And I think that's part of it, is the IMAX film.
Yeah.
You can actually see.
They shot a bit of Nope, Jordan Peele's Nope. Hoyte van Hoytema shot that on IMAX film, along with some other sensor stuff with the Alexa, so they can do infrared, so they can have night scenes. Mm-hmm. And the night scenes on IMAX, scenes that are in Nope, are amazing too. Love IMAX film. That's my production value moment, is IMAX film plus Joe Willems and everybody who had anything to do with the visuals for this film, because they typically do not look that good. And I think Bruno Debonel, he shot Harry Potter 7, got an Oscar nom for it, deservedly so. But it's I love when the DP actually gets a chance to make a high budget movie and then actually use that budget, because sometimes, especially with these more green screen related movies, they don't get to show the juice, and they could be great DPs. Chugging along, Kat, dialogues. What is your favorite piece of dialogue? Something that really hits you in the heart or has a great meaning to it? Dialogues. What's that dialogue for you?
I have a lot. I'm so sorry. You asked me about a book adaptation movie, and you know what's a lot of a book? Fucking dialogues.
I mean, without dialogue, without story, you ain't nowhere, right? You need the dialogue. Give me some bars, Kat.
Okay.
Give me some bars.
So let's start off with what you mentioned earlier. Peeta and Katniss on the train talking about their favorite colors and such. He says to Katniss, what's your favorite color? And she immediately goes back and goes, wow, now you've stepped over the line. That was just so funny. It fed into her attitude in the moment, but also she was trying to be playful. I really like that little touch.
There's a lot of dry humor in this movie that like
Oh yeah.
that sardonic, like that Nolan humor that I always love. That's what that is.
I love, you know me. I love humor in any and all aspects I can get it in. Dry humor is great. I'm a very big fan of playing it straight humor as well, as we saw with the Christmas draft. But in addition to that, I really like, in a same vibe, I really appreciate how when we enter the president's mansion at the end of the victory tour, Effie says, "Oh, mahogany." You know, that was a line that she improvised. That was fan service. And when she was asked about it, she said, "You have to keep that line. The fans will love it." And you know what? We do. We appreciate this gift that you gave us.
What context, please?
So in the first movie, when Katniss stabs the table with the knife, Effie says, "That's mahogany." And
Okay.
in this movie,
Okay.
she points at like a bookshelf or a table or something. I don't remember. And she goes, "Oh, mahogany." Because she made a comment about just the kind of wood in the first movie. And no one put that line in for her. She improvised it because she saw how excited the fans were and how much they thought it was funny and entertaining. I really like a good improvisation that is kept.
I want to take the time to say that Effie definitely should have a bigger role. And I feel like if I was adapting this, or I feel like if any woman adapted this, they would have given her more time. And I think there's something to be said. Why are there not more women directing women-led movies, especially big budget movies? It's changing now with like stuff like Wonder Woman and Nia DaCosta direct the Marvels and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
we need more. And I feel like this would have been handled better by a woman.
You know, maybe if women directed all these YA dystopian book adaptations.
Only if they got the chance to write them, direct them, produce them, edit them, shoot them. Like
shame.
they need all those roles. And
They
it's
do.
not like these women don't exist. It's just Hollywood has to give them the chance to do it. And it's not like they don't give these random ass men who have only done like one movie or two movies that are small budgets, these massive budgets to make big movies.
Oh,
It happens
yeah.
all the time. It should be done for people of color and women. So I'm gonna get off my high horse. And Kat, any more dialogues?
So I have two more. Haymitch reminds Katniss right before she goes into the arena. I believe it's the night before after the interviews. He says, "Katniss, when you're in the arena, remember who the real enemy is." And that is just plot and story-wise incredibly important because Katniss falls back on that. Finnick reminds her of that line later.
So my dialogue moment of this film is actually at the end of the film where Finnick and so it's the last scene of the
Yeah.
the last climactic scene of the movie where the line is cut and they don't know if they're trying to kill these people, but they're trying to figure out how to get out. And Katniss looks at the sky, or in like
The force
she knows
field.
like this. There's something with this thunder going on, and she is in her corner again. She's back in the Hunger Games mode. She's scared. She's fearful. She doesn't know what happened to Peeta. And then Finnick comes back and she's ready to kill him. And he says that line, remember who the enemy is. And it's just a moment of clarity. It's like a moment of breath. Just narratively where they take out that frantic pacing and it's like, oh wait, and then she has her like hero arc moment
Yeah.
where she's just like, F y'all, I'm out of here, right? And she looks up and she shoots the arrow into the dome, and it is the perfect moment of like just translated to life that no matter what's going on, remember who the real enemy is. Remember that you're being put into situations by powers in this world that you have no control over at times.
Absolutely.
But you have control over the actions that you do. And instead of killing somebody, she frees everybody and she becomes this symbol that she's meant to be. And we'll talk about what that symbol means
Yeah.
with the next two films.
I really love it because it's the through line that you don't really pick up on in the first movie because she's in the games.
Yeah, and we're talking about dialogues. Good dialogue doesn't mean like something where it's like they've written some sort of like
Incredible.
beautiful
Yeah.
prosaic thing, and that dialogue is like it's just like magical and musical. Good dialogue can be simple. Good dialogue is memorable. Good dialogue is something that attaches to you. And Zach can attest to this. We used to quote The Dark Knight all the time, and those lines like stick with you, right? It's like you either die a hero or live long enough to become a villain.
Yup.
Like that's just like simple stuff. but it's like that line means so much, and you
There's
remember that
layers.
stuff. And this is perfectly what the dialogue section is about, Kat. Great choice.
Well,
Where's Rachel?
shut up.
Where's
No more dead cops.
Well, that makes me feel better with how I'm going to end
Worst
this
piece of
section.
dialogue. Worst piece of dialogue in an amazing movie. But I think there's an intention to that. We're not going to talk about it.
Kat, do you have any more dialogues?
So I feel a little guilty now that we went into that whole important line discussion for a moment.
But I mean,
Because my last piece of dialogue is when Snow is watching the victors hold hands after the interviews. And he says, "Look at this. They're holding hands. I want them dead." It's so funny. Snow is a fucking king here. I love it. I hate him and I love it.
but Plutarch literally says moves and counter moves, right?
Yep.
That's what every script is, right? He says it, perfectly, that you give these people hope, then that's the problem, right?
Yep.
And that's what they were doing. They don't go into detail about it in the movie too much, but I had read that all the victors actually were pushing their tables together in the book.
Yep.
They're chopping it up during lunch. They're having
Oh,
lunch
yeah.
together, and they're having a good time together. They don't forget that they're humans, and they're there to kill each other for whatever messed up reason, for the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
But even they all have been through this traumatic thing and done terrible things, but they're trying to be humans together.
So
and that matters.
the victors in the books, you have to remember, some of these people have known each other for decades. So some of them are friends. Some of these people don't really want to kill each other, and some of them are totally fine participating in killing. But that's fine. That's expected. But what we see in the
Yeah.
book is them eating lunch together, helping each other out, chatting. And Katniss and Peeta sit there and they say, "It's really hard for me to get to know these people because it's going to make it even harder to kill them in the arena, because Katniss's one goal is to keep Peeta alive. And of course, Peeta's one goal is to keep her alive too." So they make the decision not to have friends in the arena after all this bonding that they do. And it's really sad because you see it and you understand it. And it's honestly a mature approach.
So is Finnick actually their friend in the book too, in the Hunger Games, in
So
the game?
Finnick introduces himself in the same way with the sugar cubes, and I saw a TikTok about how this person just really wants to be a sugar cube, and I can't even blame them. But
He had to eat sugar cubes that whole day. I'm telling you, they probably had. He
Poor
was probably
baby.
eating like 20 packs of
bunch of 'em.
sugar cubes, just like
he was just having a great time.
being hot.
Yeah.
Okay, I will say 2 seconds. That scene with Sam Claflin with the sugar
Yeah.
cubes, the man has never looked more like Aquaman. I've never seen a man look more like
should've-
Aquaman in
I
my
don't
life
wanna-
besides Jason Momoa.
I love Jason Momoa, but I feel like he would have been a really good Aquaman too.
If they went with like a classic, aka white version,
Yeah, with the
of,
old school
of
costume.
Aquaman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the costume on Aquaman is amazing. I can't wait to see that this week. Okay, Kat, we're gonna move on
Yeah, we gotta move on.
because I'm literally gonna talk about Aquaman for like 10 minutes. Okay, Kat,
Yeah.
you know who should have been this movie? Come on, let's recast the role.
Oh no.
Kat, do you have any recast for this movie or this franchise or anybody else in between?
Oh, baby. Do I have a recast for you? So, I
Hit
have
me
one
with
that
one.
could
I'm gonna
be
hit you with
in-
4.
Oh god. This person could be in either Flickerman or Seneca Crane. Thank you, SNL, for this inspiration. Bill Hader can be Caesar Flickerman or Seneca Crane in any and all of my Hunger Games movies.
Bill
We
Hader.
may or may not have watched the SNL skits today and yesterday in preparation for this beautiful podcast. And this is me trolling you.
He's one of the best creatives out there. If you're like a real
Oh,
nerd
he
like
is.
me, go listen to him on the Deacons podcast. I love Bill Hader. Great choice.
I love him. He can do anything.
He can do anything. He literally can do anything. Do you have any more casts?
No, this is just me fucking with you. Honestly, like, I don't need to recast any of the roles, but when I saw him in the SNL skit, I told Zach, I'm like, I could see him in the movies. And he goes, "If you don't say it, I will."
Okay. Because for me, same thing here. I don't necessarily need to recast anybody, but these are just
Yeah.
thoughts that like floated in my head, and I was like, if I did
Go
this
for it.
today, who would I go with? So for me, I'm going to start with Flickerman since you brought up Flickerman. I've got you 3 choices for Flickerman, but the first one is going to be Jason Mantzoukas, if I'm saying his name right. Do you know who I'm talking about? He's the husband for Janet in The Good Place. He's the
Yes.
perfume guy in Parks and Rec.
Yes.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
Imagine
Yes, thank
him.
you.
Imagine him as Flickerman. I think he would be a great job.
That would be awesome.
So that's a funny one. If I was picking for my personal choice, I'd go Paul Giamatti as Flickerman. I think have you seen Big Fat Liar? I feel like there's some Big Fat Liar energy to
No.
Flickerman.
Yeah, I do see that energy because I mean I grew up with that being a thing in society.
Okay,
So yeah, I see the energy
I'm gonna hit
there.
you with the good one though.
Okay.
Jennifer Coolidge.
Yes!
Jennifer Coolidge as a Flickerman.
Lay.
It doesn't have to be like, I'm not worried about like whatever, he's a man or whatever, but imagine her as that character. I think it would be better than
my
any of these
God.
men. Think about it.
I feel like would it be appropriate to the book? No. Would she be fantastic? Absolutely. I feel like she could do it because she's got the sass, she's got the vibe, and the whole point of Caesar Flickerman is to be a host of a show and to just keep people talking and keep the audience engaged. So she'd be great.
She can play this almost oblivious individual at times, and
She could play
that's sort
dumb,
of like
easy.
quote unquote
We've seen
obliviousness. I feel like she could juxtapose the serious with the
Yeah.
comedy, or like the confused person, whatever. She could do
Mm-hmm.
it perfectly. So Katniss, I'm going to recast Katniss, but you can't get mad at me because this is some recent, casting. I'm going to go 20s for Katniss.
Okay.
My first thought was Zendaya, but you could just throw Zendaya in anything. My choice,
Yeah,
though,
Zendaya can
for
do anything.
Katniss is Victoria Pedretti. Do you know who I'm talking about, Kat? She's in The Haunting of Hill House. She's in the show You. She's in so
Yeah.
much. She's in Once Upon a Time for like one scene. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. What do you think about her?
Zachary, go ahead and say your piece.
She's the one from You, right?
Yes.
She's the hottie. She's
Ooh.
love.
You got her wrong. She's the Jenna Malone cast replacement if you're casting somebody.
She is.
She's got like the vibe, the look. That's who
She's
she
too
would
good.
be.
So for Jenna Malone,
I love
for
her.
Joanna, I'd put Olivia Cook. She's in House of Dragons now as the older
Yeah.
version of Ray. Is it Ray?
I
That's
see
not
it.
Rhaenyra. The other one. I forgot her name.
No.
She's got a weird energy. I don't know.
Olivia Cook.
I feel like she could do it.
I love her. Bates Motel.
We watched that horse movie.
She's great. Yeah, Thoroughbreds. But
Yeah, that was a good movie.
PETA. Do you know Barry Keoghan? He's in Banshees of Inisherin. He was Joker for the deleted scene of the Batman. He's in a
Yeah.
bunch of small roles. I don't know if you've seen him. He's
Yeah.
in Saltburn, the most recent release for him. And Barry
Okay.
Keoghan, he's a short king too, and he would have done PETA well.
Love it.
In like a recent one. And my hottest one, or I have two more. My Gale would be
Okay.
Dacre Montgomery. Have you seen Stranger Things, Kat? Dacre
Yeah.
is Sadie Sink's character's Max's brother, the one that's like the hot bodyguard. So I went a bit himbo vibe for Gale, but I wanted to make sure that it's actually a good actor playing him now. So I went with Dacre.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
And for my last one, I'm obviously I got to recast President Snow. I would have gone classic with
Yeah.
Christopher Plummer, but I'm not. I'm going to go with Brian Cox as President Snow. Succession fans, come get it. Come get it. Brian Cox as President Snow would have been even more sinister.
Absolutely. Pure evil.
Wait, so can Matthew McFadden be PETA then?
Oh, with the hands?
Yeah.
Pride and Prejudice.
Oh my god. It would be too much for me.
So if we made this for the 2000s, Brian Cox would be Snow, and then he would be Peter. Okay. We that's awesome.
We can't. You fucking dummies.
Kat,
Yeah.
the Layla. Any needle drops, any piece of score. I think with this movie, there's actually a bit of music that they made specifically for the movies too. Is there any music within the story, within the needle drops, within anything with the Hunger Games, catching fire that really resonated with you?
So it's more of a discussion of how the music that Katniss sings, these songs, these ballads, they are passed down through oral tradition. Through the books that Katniss heard all this music from her father. He loved to sing. And any music that was part of District 12 history, he would sing and she would sing along with him. He taught her Hanging Tree. I believe he taught her the song from the first movie. Everything she knows, she learned through her dad. And it's just a nice little bit of how oral tradition is upheld with these songs, and the community continues to pass them down in this way. It's a very old school way of sharing music, and I like the recognition here that they have in the books for it, because that is the most classic way to learn a song.
Cat, my people literally did not write anything down and just passed it down. It's kind of a flaw, and it's kind of an emotionally important thing that was true within my people, within the people, the Indic people, that we didn't write anything down. We always pass it along, and our culture still stands high today, even before, people were writing things down within our culture.
Oral tradition is extremely important.
I didn't realize that Katniss's father was, I've heard zero details about him.
So he was, of course, a minor, but her father and her mother got together when they were younger, and Peeta's dad wanted to marry Katniss's mom, but Katniss's mom fell in love with her father because the birds would be quiet when he sang. And it is the most beautiful and poetic thing. He sang so beautifully that the birds, the mockingjays that repeat anything and everything with a beautiful lullaby, would be quiet to hear him sing. And it's just so lovely. And he is a precious character that we don't get to hear more about. And
so I guess they're making another prequel. They got to make another prequel now.
I hope so.
Let's do it.
I hope so. That'd be really cool.
Oh, as if we don't have enough prequels and all this IP stuff already. Whatever.
A nice little tidbit from me. I was so hyped for the Hunger Games movie that I bought the soundtrack when it was released. The moment it was released, I bought it on iTunes. It is still on my iTunes. It pops up on my phone. If my phone doesn't automatically play Spotify, one of the first few things that plays is the Hunger Games soundtrack.
That's awesome.
Because my phone is synced to iTunes still.
That's awesome.
But yeah, no, they have great music that was made for the movie. They have great songs written in the books that they bring to the films. And I really appreciate that they pull music into a book and an adaptation of that book.
Since you guys didn't bring this up, I wanted to butt in and just point out the fact that this set of movies is really good at capturing who the most famous or important pop songwriters are of the time when it came out. Let me list off a few to you because I have a list here.
Zach is a big Lorde fan, so here we go.
I mean,
he is.
I don't like a lot of pop, but I do like her a lot. So yeah, obviously Lorde has a song.
Like me with Dua Lipa.
Kid Cudi has a song on the first Hunger Games. Arcade Fire also has a song.
Taylor Swift. You have not said Taylor Swift. I was on my way to that. Taylor Swift. Sia, is that how you say her name?
Yeah.
Yeah, she has one. Coldplay has a song, which, I mean, they're not big anymore, but The Weeknd has a song. And, of course, in the newest one, Olivia Rodrigo has a song. So it's really good at capturing that just teeny bop or even just pop, like whatever that was big at the time when the movie came out.
I would think that maybe Olivia Rodrigo would be interested in participating, not just for participating in the movie, but maybe she also grew up with the books because she's younger.
Yeah,
so she's a fan.
She on her TikTok, she definitely had enough content on there to where she is definitely a fan. Hunter Schafer also
love it.
A big fan of the franchise.
Oh yeah, I know that.
Yep.
Hunter Schafer, fantastic, and love to see them in the movie.
Zach, real quick, since I have you here, the list of directors that they had for this movie is wild. Listen to this short list. This is a very 2013 short list. Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, Alfonso Cuarón, David Cronenberg.
Was Cronenberg the one that did that weird movie? That really weird one?
Yes, he does a lot of weird movies.
Yeah, not a big Cronenberg
Bennett
guy.
Miller was on the list.
Bennett Miller?
The one that...
He don't make
Bennett
movies.
Miller. I know, right? It's a travesty. But it's like they were going for some high caliber directors for this movie.
I think they wanted this movie...
Deservedly so, honestly.
Yeah, I think they wanted this movie to be their Prisoners of Azkaban. I think they wanted to bring in a big guy. Again, I mean, they wanted to bring in Alfonso because they knew this book had the most juice out of all the books. So they really wanted to nail it. And they did, but I think they wanted to let it go to another level like Prisoners of Azkaban did.
I
Yeah.
completely agree.
Okay. Kat, it's been 10 years since they released Catching Fire.
Yikes. Yeah, it
Everybody
has.
in front of the camera, behind the camera, there's been so much going on with these people. Do you have any thoughts about the legacies that this movie has, this franchise has, or these actors and other individuals have?
I'm surprised Josh Hutcherson hasn't gotten more. J-Law has had a solid up and down career, but has had really interesting roles. Elizabeth Banks is
I think
always
since
fucking
Zach's not
awesome.
really talking right now, I'll bring up what
Yeah,
he
go
always
for
says.
it.
It's like a Oscar. It's a post-Oscar curse for her, where it's like she got an Oscar a little too fast, and I think she's done extremely compelling work and fantastic work that is vastly better than Silver Linings Playbook. And I'm not going to talk about the director, but she could have done. She's got so much more in the can. She's gonna do so much more great stuff, and
Yeah.
the place that she's at is really good, and I just keep hoping that she makes more and more movies, because I've been missing her on the big screen. She had one movie this
too.
year. It was solid, great comedy, but we need more Jennifer Lawrence in the zeitgeist. There's not enough
I love
of
J-Lo.
her right now.
She is making a comeback.
hilarious.
She did do that Apocalypse
No Hard Feelings.
movie. No.
Don't Look Up.
Which
My aunt worked on that
even
movie.
though I think we have mixed feelings on it, was a big movie. No Hard Feelings did not do well, but it was still her leading a comedy vessel, which is still a movie
And she
star
did
thing.
good.
Yeah, and then she also had that small movie. She had a small movie last year that came out on Apple. Forgetting the name.
She did,
Yeah,
didn't she?
it's like Safeways.
Yeah, the
No.
movie with Brian Tyree Henry.
Something
I
like
saw
that.
it. It was good.
Yeah.
She was really good in that movie.
But you're right.
Yeah.
She kind of had a time where she attached herself to David O. Russell's movies, which aren't very good, and disappeared. And she needs to come back and work with some good directors, because she is a good actress, but her choice of movies was poor for a while.
I'm glad that she's off the David O. Russell train, and I don't think she's going to be going back to any more toxic filmmakers, hopefully. But
Fingers crossed.
I think back then she got a lot of hate for no reason, especially for body shaming and things like that. And I'm glad that that stuff's hopefully kind of over. I don't know if it still happens.
I mean, of course it does.
I feel like she got the back end of some disgusting hate for no reason. And literally Rachel Ziegler was getting hate as being, the new person in a Hunger Games movie. She was getting hate for no reason. And
Yeah, I didn't have any issues with her.
I don't have
If
any issues with
anything,
these people
the
either,
only-
but people love to be haters.
People do. They love to just go at people for no reason.
And like you
And
said,
I don't understand
Josh
that
Josh
perspective.
Hutcherson should have been after this franchise should have been in everything.
everything.
That man, is it because he's short?
I think it is. I think he's
I'm not
short,
I'm not a
and
short
that's
king.
why.
I'm not a short king, but
I'm all for it.
I stand for my brothers.
You stand tall for them while they're short.
Hey, they're not short. Just like you can't. The man can't do anything about it. Just love the
No,
man for who he is.
I have no issue with his height.
And
I
it's
think
like
that might
Peter
be one of
Dinklage.
the things that
Yeah.
people didn't want to cast him for.
And it's like, this man deserves to be a lead. They never give him leading
does.
roles. I think I've literally watched Josh since he was a kid, and I think he's a good actor, and he deserves more as a white man.
I really enjoyed him in movies growing up. I just don't remember what.
Bridge to
it was.
Terabithia.
Yep, that's it. The movie that made me fucking cry. Awful. You
Oh,
know
yeah.
what? Screw that movie.
I read the book, and I was like, I don't want
Journey
to watch
to the
that
Center
movie.
of the Earth. I loved
Yeah.
Journey to the Center of the Earth when I was a kid. I was
Coming
10
on the
when
pod.
it came out.
Psych.
We cannot do
That's
Journey
the
to Center
wrong
of the Earth.
number.
He's in Zathura. I remember that. That was
Zathura
awesome.
too.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a
Wait.
huge crush on Josh Hutcherson when I was a kid. Massive. He was in all these movies that I really
Side
liked.
note, didn't
Yeah.
Jon Favreau do Zathura?
Yes,
Fuck yeah.
obviously.
He was in Howl's Moving Castle. I forgot. When we looked up the cast, he did the little kid's voice. He's had a decent history. He hasn't been in as much recently, but I hope to see him in more. He's at an age where people are going to start casting him for more of an adult role. I don't want to say he's got a baby face, but his height.
Yeah, he needs
Yeah.
that post Harry Potter Daniel Radcliffe vibe. I think he deserves it. Daniel
He does.
Radcliffe, amazing actor too, man.
Love him.
Okay, Kat. So MVP, the most valuable
Yep.
player. You the MVP mom, as KD says. Who put the team on their back? Who is the person where, without that individual being present within the production of Catching Fire, where without them this movie is not as good? Who is that?
How cheap is it if I say Suzanne Collins?
Okay, mine.
How cheap
I'm
is it
gonna
for
say
me to do the
J-Law.
author?
I'm gonna say J-Law,
Yeah,
but
J-Law's-
no, you're 100% right. because when
Yeah.
I've been on a spiritual this is the last pod of 2023 for us, and I've been on a bit of a spiritual writing is key, writing is everything, story above everything else vibe this year. And this is the best way to end this year, because I think what Suzanne Collins crafted within this is a very relevant, timeless story about humanity and how we can be the greatest things and we can be the downright worst things within
Absolutely.
the same second. So
This is a series that's designed to give you some form of emotion and also exposure to these concepts. It's clearly written for teenagers. It's an easy read. I listen to the audiobook for my reread because it's more convenient for me. I work a full-time job. I'm a slow reader. I'm dyslexic. It's easier for me to do an audiobook sometimes, especially on a reread. I think it took me, I read at 1.25 speed, about 8 hours and 45 minutes for each book. These are quick reads, they're easier to comprehend, but these books are written to give teenagers and young adults exposure to YA dystopian concepts and trauma, depression, big thoughts like politics, ethics. Like, this is a way to introduce concepts, and Suzanne Collins does a great job. And without these books, these movies would have not had a foundation to be built on, because these movies are great adaptations, and I'm sure someone could have written a really good screenplay, but I feel like the books give the foundation that's needed to have a full and complete story.
And I feel like her presence throughout the movies is there. Like, she wasn't just someone who got thrown aside, and I think Lionsgate or whoever was doing the producing work on this made sure that the topics that they're talking about stay present. And it's like, I think there's a whole issue of the fact that these books, anytime they have a YA book, these books are not meant to be PG-13 things. They're very hard. Life is R-rated, whether you want it to be or not. It really is. And they still found a way, snaked through all these elements, and it didn't feel like they were having any cop-outs. Obviously, there's some stuff that they show and don't show, but like I said, they are showing blood rain. They're showing people being executed, and among many other very intense things. And they deliver it. But like you said, without Suzanne being there, thinking it up, then this would not exist. Amazing MVP, obviously. And for me, it was on screen.
Is not wrong at all. J-Law did a fantastic job. You can see it throughout the whole series. Her facial acting, the subtleties in even just a scene where she's trying to keep a straight face or play something off in a more serious manner. She has some facial acting in her eyes, just the slight gaze that she can give someone. It's fantastic.
That's why I went with like Olivia Cook and like Victoria Pendretti and like Zendaya. I feel like that's exactly what I was thinking about.
They
I was
have
thinking about younger
fantastic
actresses
facial acting skills
where
too.
like I just need to look at their face and I can tell what their entire soul is thinking of within that second. That's not an easy thing to pursue or like, depict on film. And I think Jennifer held up that end, but she also did it gracefully just as an actress through these films, no matter what was going on.
Absolutely.
Amazing work.
I have it written down
doesn't get her
in
credit.
notes for the next two movies as well. It's consistent throughout the whole series.
Yeah. So that's the catching fire portion pretty much for us of this podcast. I will say that we need to have some companion movies. Kat, do you have any companion stuff? I will say stuff because we talked about it and it sounds like you haven't brought up any movies. So what's up?
So I don't have a companion movie per se. I considered a bunch of different movies that people might enjoy after watching this series. Unfortunately, stuff in the same genre just isn't as good. We've talked about it. Divergent, Maze Runner, Percy Jackson, not the show that drops today.
I will say Wes Ball made some juice with Maze Runner. It's just, I'd be lying if I said it was as good as this. I'm excited for his new Planet of the Apes movie, but it's just, the dude did good with what he was handed, and it's not necessary. Thematically, it's not as great as Hunger Games.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of things that are in the same realm and at the same level, and unfortunately,
Harry
stuff
Potter,
doesn't meet
that's about it.
Harry Potter's the only thing, but I'm not going to wreck Harry Potter. everyone's seen it and read it.
But Hunger Games is better at tackling relevant issues. I will say that.
Absolutely.
Harry Potter's a lot of fun, but that's
Harry
about
Potter's
it.
so much fun.
I think my favorite moments of Harry Potter are the ones where they actually have like, emotional moments, Cedric dying, or the end of like Harry, like the 5th movie where Harry's like, you're alone. Like Voldy, you ain't got nobody. And that's
Harry
why
Potter
you're
grows
not going
with
to win.
you.
Yeah.
And Hunger Games is consistently at that same level. You're just being more exposed to the universe.
Yeah.
So instead of having a companion movie, I hate to disappoint, I'm going to recommend books. So off the bat, of course, if you have not read the Hunger Games series, including Ballad, I highly recommend reading it. I'm sorry, it's better than the movies.
I hope you already read it, because
yeah,
we talk about a lot.
Yeah, no, there's so much more to it, and enjoy the ride, even if we've spoiled it for you somewhat. Enjoy the ride. It's fantastic. I've reread it several times, even as an adult, and it holds up for all ages. In addition to that, if you're in the younger age range, if you're thinking of something for more teenagers, I recommend Divergent. I haven't read it since I was a teenager, but it hits home. It's fantastic. And then if you're more of an adult, sorry, Book Talk's gonna love it. Go read the Sarah J. Maas books, because A Court of Thorns and Roses, Throne of Glass, my favorite out of the 3, and Crescent City, all the same concept of a naive girl or a young woman that's going through some interesting events, complicated worlds that build over the series, that build over time. They fight oppressors on the smaller end, and as the series go on, it's more complex issues. And I'm not going to get further into it, but yeah, I highly recommend these very empowering female lead, like women written books. Always love to see it. Don't
Awesome.
read Crescent City if you are a child. That is, and don't read ACOTAR.
I don't
the
know
last
too much
book.
about the Sarah J. Maas books, but I've heard they're
The
they
books.
intense.
They're young adult
intense.
for a portion, and then they turn new adult. So that is my content warning for age range.
Gotcha.
Spicy.
If I
Yeah.
have to recommend one of these sorts of books, it's gonna be Sabriel by Garth Nix. There's some. It's like the Abhorsen book series.
I've heard it's really good.
Margot Robbie was talking about them, and I love those books. The only thing I would recommend besides that, in terms of film also, is, like I said, I thought this was very sci-fi to me. So Philip K. Dick, Minority Report, and everything else in between, where they've adapted his stories and they've turned out well for movies or TV shows. I recommend all that. Read his short stories. And I'm going to give you one pick that's a bit out there, which is a 2005 movie called Little Manhattan, starring a very young Josh Hutcherson. And this movie, it's just a random, it's a romance movie with Josh Hutcherson as like a 10-year-old lead, and I think it's a really good movie. I remember watching it quite a few times on cable, and I always loved it. So Little Manhattan, 2005, check it out.
Oh, he's such a baby.
But Kat, the emotions hit in that movie. He's so good even at that age. He's so good even at that age.
He had some great talent even at a young age. Like, I love to see it.
So typically we would end the podcast there, but we're going to keep going. We're going to talk about Mockingjay, the movies and the book a little bit, and the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the recent film that they just released, and the book related to that. So, Kat, for me, like I said, after I watched Catching Fire, I did feel the need to watch Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, but I was like, I'll watch them both together. I'll watch them with somebody, and I never got the time. It just kind of got away from me. And coming back to it, now I see like Mockingjay is kind of the Harry Potter 7, where it's like everything is extremely serious. The story is really good and it resolves extremely, honestly, perfectly. But I think that inherently, without some of the more fun vibes, or like not fun, but like juicy vibes that Catching Fire had, is the reason why I don't have as much love for those films. But I respect the hell out of them because they play as war movies for me.
Absolutely.
Kat, what are your thoughts about Mockingjay?
Mockingjay is actually really good, shockingly enough. I've only seen it one other time before now. And you're right, it doesn't hold the same impact and emotional position as Catching Fire. Mockingjay Part 1, I find to be the best adapted movie out of the series in the way that it is the most true to the book, and the things that they made, which there are some major things, the things that they made changes to were for the better, and I almost wholeheartedly agree with. There are some things, of course, that I'm not a huge fan of that they changed and adapted, but overall, I was surprised that I found Mockingjay Part 1 to be the most well adapted from the book and most closely aligned
I
with
did
it.
read like the Wikipedia real quick. Wikipedia for the book in comparison to watching both of the films back to back, and I was like, "Oh, this is actually surprisingly close. This doesn't feel like it's been like a departure or any sense."
Sorry, that was my dog. Yeah, I found it to be very closely aligned with the book, and I was very pleased with it. So, Mockingjay Part 1 starts off with Katniss having PTSD and trying to ground herself while experiencing her trauma. She's stating things that she knows to be true, her name, where she's from, etc. These are things that are common when you're having a panic attack or PTSD, any kind of traumatic experience that's weighing down on you. This is one of the first things they recommend when you're going to therapy and seeking tools to better yourself and to heal. So I really appreciate them starting the movie so then you're already in her headspace. You know that she's not in a comfortable or healthy position, and you know that she's freaking the fuck out. And it's an appropriate
There's
position
a lot of freaking out in Mockingjay Part 1, the end of that movie.
There is.
The end of that movie. My God.
It's intense. They cut it at the right time too, because that is the most emotionally climactic point.
The intercutting between Coin talking, doing this propaganda stuff, and then
we saved the tributes.
And then what they did with Josh. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about. I'm thinking about like the performance that like the camera just comes in and we get that perspective, and it is so intense. Like I'm literally goosebumps.
Heavy.
Literally, yeah.
And this movie, Mockingjay Part 1 specifically, is the movie that I sat there and said, holy shit, Josh Hutcherson is not getting enough. Because do you see his facial acting? Do you see his like tweaking the fuck out? Just, he's not even in this movie much. He's only really in it for a couple segments and then at the end. And
all gas, all juice, no break. That
everything.
man comes in, he's the hot take.
Fantastic.
He's the hot
On fire of Part 1, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and in Part 1, I wanted to touch on the fact that we see Effie in District 13, and she is going to be helping Katniss. And you know what? Effie is not in the third book.
I ain't gonna lie. Whoever did Effie's makeup for Mockingjay, she straight up looks like the scene from Austin Powers where Dr. No is in prison doing the "It's a hard knock life for us," doing all that. That's what Effie looked like. I'm sorry. But she's amazing. Elizabeth Banks was great in that role in that movie. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. She,
It's not Dr. No.
Oh, wait. Oh, Dr. Evil.
There you go.
I'm going with the OG, you know?
So Effie is not actually present in much of Mockingjay. She pops up at the very end. Instead, Katniss's original prep team that worked with Cinna helps her get ready for these propaganda shoots. But in the movie, we don't get a chance to get to know the prep team or bond with them in the same way that we do in the books. So the adaptation changed to have Effie take that role, completely appropriate. And you know what? I'm happy to see more of Elizabeth Banks. I'll take anything and everything that woman wants to give. I'm happy
and
to have her.
And she's been directing
here.
now, too. She directed the Charlie's Angels movie and that the Cocaine Bear movie.
More reason for me to watch Charlie's Angels. So, at the lake, Katniss and Pollux are sitting together, and Pollux is an Avox. His tongue was cut out as punishment by the Capitol, and him and his brother.
Shout out to my mans. I forgot. I don't know. I'm blanking his name. It's late
You're
tonight.
Shouting out a man
but
you don't know his name.
He's a fantastic actor. He's in Daredevil as Foggy. Amazing actor. I love that man.
He's great. I love this scene because she's interacting with Pollux and she recognizes him as a person. She's not uncomfortable with him. She sees what's gone on and she's fine with it. So they're chilling by the lake and he asks her to sing for the birds, for the mockingjays. And she starts singing Hanging Tree. And this is a song that is illegal to sing. It is not written as a law illegal, but in District 12, spoiler for Ballad book, in District 12, Lucy Gray sings this song at the head peacekeeper's birthday party as a message to Snow to say, hey, let's escape. And she's told, hey, the song is way too heavy. We cannot sing it. And she says, oh, my bad. No worries. Don't worry about it. We won't sing it again. Clearly that song circulated. And what is it? 65 years later, Katniss is singing it because her daddy sang it. And her mom wouldn't let her sing it in the house. So anyway, she sings it at the lake. She has no intention of trying to get the cameras. She's just being authentic and wholesome. And the way that they present this scene, just casually enjoying lunch at the lake, they're noticing that she's singing, and Cressida and her team starts recording on the down low. Cressida is the best director and the best documentarian I've ever seen. Also, awesome. Love her. Love her in Game of Thrones. She's my favorite. But anyway, the scene's just really well done, and the way they adapted it from the book holds the same energy. And I love to see a scene hold that light to the book.
Yeah,
There's a few other scenes in this movie and this whole franchise that does that, but specifically stuff where Katniss is singing, I appreciate. But I do want to add, Plutarch changes the line necklace of rope to necklace of hope. And I have some really mixed thoughts on that. You could take it at face value and say that he's just changing the line to better fit their propaganda. But I think there's some underlying message about how stories and messages can be lost in translation, whether that's intentional or not. Plutarch might not have realized that he's diluting the integrity of the song and the meaning behind it. I mean, this song, Snow didn't fully comprehend in the book. Lucy Gray had much more meaning in her music that she wrote than was being understood. And I just thought that's some food for thought.
For me, I don't know. Rope and hope, I mean, I think the meaning is almost opposite in a way. I think hope is more positive, which I prefer. But like you said, to each their own. And there's a very vast difference between one perspective and the other perspective. That's for sure. Anything else about Mockingjay Part 1?
They make the change of having Katniss in the control room during the rescue mission. She and Finnick in the books work on propos to distract Snow and everyone in the Capitol, and there's no direct communication with Snow. But that's not nearly as entertaining for a film. So instead, we see Finnick spilling the secrets, which these secrets are juicy. We hear that Snow is poisoning people to get into power. These are very interesting things that we may or may not seen in a prequel. But instead of having Katniss participate in that, she is in the control room watching the mission happen, which allows us to go between several different shots and different storylines at the same time. Yeah. And Katniss decides, hey, we're losing the battle with the Capitol with the radio waves and whatnot. I'm going to start to call Snow. And this does not happen in the books, but to keep that tension between Katniss and Snow, specifically Snow, not just the Capitol, to keep that tension alive, adding this really is a good touch. I thought I wouldn't like it, and I think it was a really good
It's like
add.
the Godfather book where it's like you got 35 pages on the page and you got to make it into one scene, and he takes the christenings in the Godfather and he intercuts it to like everyone getting murdered. And it's just good adaptation work. They actually do this. They consolidate some storylines at the end of a Ballad, the movie, to do this same sort of effect. Essentially, they streamline it in a sense, and they make it easier to shoot and write. Whatever, it's awesome. On to Mockingjay Part 2, Kat. For me, Mockingjay Part 2. I mean, interestingly, like when it comes to all the action in Mockingjay 1 and 2, I'm not interested in any of it. It's all the character work.
Mockingjay Part 2 was kind of boring compared to the others. So that's not me dissing on the movie.
I'm a I mean, I like boring movies, Kat. You already know this. I like boring movies.
know.
I like juicy movies. I like all movies. But Kat, give me your thoughts on the film.
So I really like that we just pick up immediately where we left off, because sometimes when you do a part 1, part 2, you do a little time jump or something and maybe throw a flashback in to bridge that gap. I'm not a huge fan of that. You kind of lose the integrity of the story when you do something like that.
Yeah.
That being said, Katniss is healing and recovering from being strangled by Peeta at the end of Mockingjay Part 1, who's hijacked by the Capitol. Poor Peeta over here is tortured and tormented for months, and now he can't think straight, and it's awful. So Katniss is finally...
Real quick, just IRL. Imagine loving someone that hard for so many years, just pining after this one individual. This himbo over here, and then they're designed, and then you're somehow made to forget that and then try to kill that same person. Like it's just
so
heartbreaking.
Sad. It kills me inside
When Katniss tries to speak, and I'm like, I don't know what I think when you use procedural moments and try to get something emotional out of it, it works extremely well. In 2013 in Captain Phillips, at the end of the film, they have Tom Hanks's character just getting like a checkup by the nurse, and it's one of the most emotional scenes. And that's kind of what they were doing with that scene where she gets the thing off. She's trying to speak.
And the first thing she does is ask for Peeta. She wants to talk to him. She's been so worked up and worried about him. And her love, regardless of how she loves him or what she's aware of with that love, she's 17 years old. She doesn't know. She just knows that she feels this emotion and she cares. That love for Peeta is so strong that even after he assaulted her and it was terrifying, and she's of course mad, she's still wanting to check. She's caring. She's worried sick. And it's so sad, but also it's so relatable.
I think there's this overarching feeling of Katniss not feeling that she deserved love and that she owed and she needed to have concern for Peeta because she knew that this dude has this feeling for me and I necessarily didn't at first. And it's like the entire story of, the books, she does start to have those feelings and understand why this man is actually good for her. It's like, if I'm just as a funny aside, if they had just got
may not be a little bit of
arranged
married,
I don't know. There's something between those two. It's just, there's some sauce there.
I love it because love can be found in so many different places, and one person may not be there at the right time for the other. Sometimes you love the right person at the wrong time and vice versa. And it's just so sad to see this happen on the screen and to just, you feel it in your heart. And this is how the movie starts.
And my thing is that I always have an issue when people make movies and they're fundamentally cynical or they're fundamentally dark, meaning you should have these dark moments with reason. A character in a revenge movie has these traumatic moments because they're trying to get back at that moment, get back at what's been happening to them, right? Gladiator, War for the Planet of the Apes. But for me, a movie, if it's just, cynical, like life is pointless, this or that, I don't like that. And I think what Suzanne does with these films, especially what she does with Mockingjay, or what she did with the story with Mockingjay and with Ballad, there's a very specific theme that I'm going to close this conversation out with. But any more thoughts about Mockingjay Part 2? Because I feel like, there's some stuff off, but there's some juice there.
So, stacked cast as always. We love to see Gwendolyn Christie, Brienne of Tarth. Love to see her in anything. Strong, feminine role model. Always happy. I forgot she was in it. I saw her and I was like, "Oh, look, it's Brienne!" I was so excited.
Yeah, they've got some great cast members. I forgot to mention people like Alan Ritchson, who's like Jack Reacher now. Great action actor. Jeffrey Wright. I mean, he's doing American Fiction right now. I've been a fan of his since I was a kid. There's a lot of great actors that come in for character roles. Jenna Malone, obviously, we've mentioned her many times. The great, amazing Woody Harrelson as Haymitch.
Yeah, of course.
And it's like,
he's a perfect Haymitch, too.
And it's like you could dismiss it being like, oh, that's just his vibe. Nah. Woody hits that character perfectly. as he does
He
with
is
pretty
the
much every character
perfect
that he does.
Haymitch.
Yeah, I love him in that.
I really enjoyed a fun little tidbit of Katniss turning down Plutarch's written speech after they broke down and took over the nut at District 2. I'm going to rephrase that because there's no way to phrase it properly. She got the nut. D's nut.
No. I love that. I love the framing and like the direction or whatever. Whoever thought of it, whoever was on set, they're like, okay, Haymitch is gonna hand her the cards for the speech, and then he just throws them aside, just throws it like litters on the ground. And I thought it was one of the most hilarious moments out of I feel like
It's
I would
such
do
a
that.
heavy
It's
movie.
hilarious. Yeah.
It's such a heavy movie. Having that little bit is so funny because
Makes
he
all the
throws it
difference.
over his shoulder, unsurprised. That's what I thought, or as I expected. And no surprise. He knows Katniss doesn't like these speeches. And it's not abundantly obvious in the books that she hates these speeches. But, I mean, you could pick up on it. It's not said, but she doesn't like it. And I like this little... It's a physical acting.
Yeah, it's the difference between film and books, where it's like
It was a good ad.
film that rolls in my head when I'm like reading a book. I see the books in my head. I'm watching a movie in my head of what I'm reading, and this is one of those moments where it's awesome. If they have this written down to like, it should be hilarious.
On top of that funny bit, Katniss snuck to the freaking hovercraft with her bow and arrow as if she isn't the only person or one of two people that uses a freaking bow in District 13. No one's gonna catch me as I sneak to the front lines. And then she gets there, immediately recognized. And I sat there, and after I wrote a whole comment in my notes about how this is ridiculous, this is not how this would go, everyone immediately recognizes her, and I go, oh, they totally just let her walk off. They didn't give a shit.
And okay, so the only thing I do want to say about like Mockingjay 1 and 2 for the overall is that I love when filmmakers, creators, writers, anybody is heartless, meaning that if they have a sharp take about somebody, they don't leave somebody out. And with this, they show both sides, where in a rebellion, in a revolution, where are people going to go bad? Where are they going to try to grab power? And the same thing with President Snow in the Capitol and this dystopian sort of story, where these people, there's always people in this world who are going to vie for temporary power. And that's what politics is, right? They just want to be temporary kings and try to act like they're doing something. And I think Suzanne Collins kind of creeps it in there slowly that you should be wary of anybody who's on one side or the other side of a spectrum saying that this is the only way to do things, because you can't dismiss people. I don't know. That's the way I read into the way that she crafts both sides, because I think one of the most horrifying moments, we see a lot of murder and stuff in the dystopian side, but in the Mockingjay stuff, when I saw the clip of the propaganda playing in the cells, whatever, in District 13, I got scared. I got genuinely scared. I'm like, that's what horrifies me more than any horror movie. That sort of stuff scares the crap out of me.
Propaganda, while I can sit back and say, okay, I can recognize where we might need to encourage people, make them feel comfortable in an environment or something. Go donate blood and help millions. Like, if you want to argue that, that's propaganda if you really want to say it. That's a hot take.
Yeah, no,
there we
is.
go. We have a hot
It
take
is.
section.
It is.
But the propaganda in this movie is very on the nose political propaganda. We don't see political propaganda to this degree in young adult movies. And when I say young adult, I mean like teenager audience age range movies. You don't see that. It's nice to see, but also incredibly scary. They teach propaganda in school. At least they did at my school. And they said, hey, keep an eye out for this. But aside from the propaganda, which I could probably talk about propaganda all day, I want to go into an emotional bit that we see when we enter the front lines, which isn't really the front lines. They're the star team. They're just there for the cameras, supposedly. We see PETA learning to play the real or not real game. At least that's what we call it in the fandom. He's asking if any of his memories are real or not. And he asks Katniss if her favorite color is in fact green. She confirms it, and then she goes on to tell him that his favorite color is orange, like the sunset, and then starts listing off details all the way down to something specific and obscure. He ties his shoes with 2 knots, and then she has to leave because she's so sad that she's clearly lost the person that she loved without realizing it before she realized she loved him, and now he's gone. And it is hard to see him alive and there, but he's not the same guy. And it's so sad.
The scene,
it's so sad.
The scene on the beach in Catching Fire.
Yeah.
That's the scene where she falls in love with him. In my
Absolutely.
movie watching perspective, that's the moment where she's like, I'm 100% in on him, on PETA. Just my take from like the movies. That's why that orange, the sunset, I feel like there's a beauty behind it, and that's why it keeps coming back.
It's such a sweet thing that she does. Like, she picks up on these little details that you only pick up on these things if you love someone. But unfortunately, we don't see it in a positive way at the moment. It is in a sad, grieving, lost sense. But she does, I think for the movie, that is when she's in love with him, or she's actually fallen in love with him at that point. She's already decided that she was going to save his life, and when PETA walked into the freaking force field and died and then it was resurrected, thank you Finnick, she was devastated and freaking the fuck out, and she was obviously in love with him then. But seeing both that life-threatening aspect and something so compassionate is extremely important in realizing internally, subconsciously, that you love someone. And it's just so sad because she's lost him at this point in the story. And I don't want to cry. And I cried when reading the book, and I cried when watching the movie, and I won't cry now, but it's just so sad. I want to add that we see Tigress in this movie, and we don't know who Tigress is until we watch Ballad, until we read that story and see that Tigress is Snow's cousin. They're about the same age. She's a little older than him. And we just know that she is an underground rebel working in the Capitol, and she was a stylist that participated in games years ago but doesn't anymore. Katniss doesn't really remember what went on, and she says she's going to kill Snow, and she smiles. Tigress is happy about that. And you know what? It makes sense now that we've read and seen Ballad. And I think it's a fantastic little ad. I think that was planted and prepped, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Suzanne Collins. But what did you think about Haymitch kissing Effie?
It felt like trauma bonding.
I hated it. I hated it so much.
I don't know.
It felt like fan service for no reason.
It felt forced. Where it's like you could have the same scene and they don't kiss. Maybe they hold hands or there's something intimate where you don't necessarily need to.
They kissed each other on the cheek and hugged, and I thought that would be plenty. He says, "Don't be a stranger," and then it's implied that the door's open, but nothing's really there at the moment because nothing fucking is. Yeah. But the little kiss there, while it's completely harmless and them adding it made so many people happy, I'm sure, I hated it. I hated it. It was icky. It made me uncomfortable. I didn't like it. It's like when your parents get divorced and you catch them kissing or something. Fuck no. I've not done that, thank God. If I caught my parents kissing, I'd kick my mom in the ass. But that's beside the point. But yeah, I think overall, I think Mockingjay Part 1 and 2 did really good with the adaptation. There's stuff that I liked and didn't like, obviously, but overall, good movies. Great series. They hold up really well. After the first movie, the cinematography got really good, so I ain't angry.
Yeah, I'm tempted to rank it right now, but let's talk about Ballad real quick, and then we're going to rank all the movies.
I only have 4 notes on it.
Okay, perfect. Hit me with your first note, which I'm pretty sure, put it this way, I'll just say it. Hunter Schafer, she just talked about Tigress. Hunter Schafer, amazing talent, a literal fan of Hunger Games, and it felt like they cut her role to pieces. Kat, what is her role in the books? Because I feel like she should have been in like half the movie, and she's in like 2 scenes.
She is so important in the books. She is Snow's moral compass. He is, obviously, they're in a traumatized childhood upbringing situation. They're poor. He's trying to uphold this. They're
Family
poor.
status
They're
quo.
trying to. Yeah. No, I heard Zach getting ice. They're
Oh.
poor. They're holding up this family status quo that they just can't realistically keep. And Tigress is there talking about how Lucy Gray and the other tributes need to be treated better. She does not agree with the games. Many people don't. But Tigress here is extremely important to the story. And unfortunately, the movie did not pull her in quite enough. And it sucks because we got Hunter Schafer. We got good casting.
I take issue with the adaptation of Ballad to where I really like the movie, but from what I've heard about the book itself, I feel like they could have made more with certain aspects, especially like, Tigress and maybe the back end. But from my perspective, they spent $100 million on this story, and I feel like they wouldn't have spent another $100 million making the back half of this movie where they're only in District 12, which I would, because I think there's a great beauty behind the work that is done there. But I don't think that they would do it just as a studio. And it speaks to why these stories are great, and I'm glad that they got adapted. But the IP system itself has flaws that don't condone good stories to the best sense possible.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that in Hunger Games, we had the hosts kind of giving a vocalization to Katniss's inner thoughts. And unfortunately, that's what we're missing in Ballad, because the book is essentially in first person, like third person, all-knowing kind of thing. But it's essentially first person. You know Snow's thoughts, you know his logical thought process, his justification of things, his annoyances. And unfortunately, it's not conveyed clearly enough in the movie. You don't realize...
The movie is third person omniscient, and I will say that the emotions that you told me about that he's having, I feel those emotions come around from Tom Blythe's acting. But yeah, maybe a narration, which can be a crutch at times, but I feel like for these sorts of stories, a narration to some extent would have helped.
I feel like for Ballad, it needed a narration, nothing heavy, but just I hate voiceovers that aren't used properly because they can be really cheap. But a voiceover would be more appropriate here, or something to convey that inner monologue, because he, for example, goes to District 12 and he's got this abnormal hatred towards the Mockingjays, and Lucy Gray and her family love them. They sing along with them. They value these birds and they're beautiful creatures. And Snow's just like, I want to kill them all. Let's use them for target practice. And it's ridiculous that we don't see that conveyed to the same extent. And there's some parts of the... There's some parts of it's so funny. There's some parts of the movie.
He's the entire time, he's like, oh, like, this bad thing is happening to me. It's like, bro, don't act like this ain't your fault. Don't act like you didn't just shoot two people because you wanted to shoot two people. And now they got to cover it up. And then you're going to kill the girl that you supposedly love because you want to go back to this life, and you're more worried about the tenets of like honor and pride and these things that are going to hurt you in the long run, rather than worrying about what actually makes you happy in your life.
Yeah,
whatever.
like the movie's good in the sense of it's got a decent pacing, the cinematography's great, good casting. I thought it visually was great. The amount of adaptation changes made were too much for me. It was no longer holding the same integrity as the story. And there's going to be people that say it's fine. That's whatever. I don't care. But for me, it's just not the same. And it's really unfortunate because this is the origin story as to how the Hunger Games came to be. People were not into the Hunger Games by the 10th one. They were checked out. No one was watching. It was not mandatory. Then Snow comes in. Let's start betting on them. Let's start caring for them. And then he says, oh, I can't afford to bet on my own tribute and sponsor them. So I think we should have a rule in place so then we as sponsors cannot deal with our own tributes, because he couldn't afford to sponsor his own tribute. And I could go on.
But this sounds like how people watch sports nowadays. People
Yeah.
need to be invested, so they look up stats, they watch all the games, they look at their social media, they bet on the situations, right?
That's how the
And
Hunger Games came to be
but
this big
think about it.
sporting
Where is the
event.
line? Where from sports to Hunger Games? What's the difference?
There's none
I'm
for
not
the
hating.
capital
I'm just
citizens.
drawing the parallel because I see it's a stark parallel.
No,
And
it's
kind of
fair.
scary. I think
They
it's scary.
literally throw the tributes into an old sport arena that got beat up and just ruined during the war. So they're literally throwing them into a sports arena to fight to the death.
Yeah,
and
now I'm scared of this world.
yeah, seriously.
Suzanne
cast is
Collins,
great,
thanks for
though.
the trauma. Thanks for the trauma, Suzanne.
It's a great book. Highly recommend. Movie's fine. I gave it a 7.
I gave it a 9.
I
I gave it a 9. I really
You didn't
loved
read the
that
book?
film that much.
He didn't read the
And
book.
I will read the book. I actually have to read the book at this rate. But it's like
You should. You'd
I don't
actually
know.
really
There
enjoy
was-
it.
And it's like everything from, the main narrative to like Viola Davis and
Oh yeah.
the great Peter Dinklage just coming in, batting, just, being amazing. And it's corny. Sure, maybe like it's over the top. It's fun, but it's extremely serious. And it's a vibe that I've been looking for. And by the end of the movie, when they're in the forest and he's, hunting for Lucy Gray, everything it's one of my favorite third acts in recent history. It's awesome.
I'm sorry. We have
I think it's a
Jason
risk.
Schwartzman, who is the perfect casting.
Oh yeah.
You did
Oh,
not
yeah.
mention him.
Yeah, Jason Schwartzman, amazing. And I just had a great time with the film. The film just came out, and I have to watch about 30 other movies in 2023, but I might just have a fun time, quote unquote fun time. I literally was eating popcorn. I had to stop eating because I was looking at hungry kids, and I felt really bad because I'm not going to lie. Okay. Any more thoughts about
yeah.
Ballad?
No, because I don't want to roast the movie too hard. I think it was good. People enjoy it. That's fine. Read the
I
book.
did.
You'll have the
I
same.
did. It's the
you'll
entire point we did this.
Yeah, I'm happy I read everything and watched all the movies. I read Ballad and watched the movie before we decided to do this, so it just worked out really well for me. But yeah, I don't have any more comments on Ballad.
So, Kat, there's 5 movies, 4 books. Which one's the best adapted?
Okay, so adaptation specifically, nothing else.
We don't need to talk about anything filmically. Or just like, what's
Yeah.
the adaptation, story to story, which one translates the best?
Mockingjay Part 1 is most closely adapted to the book, and any changes made for the screen were good for the most part. Catching Fire follows because it's the beating heart of the story and the series. There are some issues and things that I miss that are nice little details, but it's okay. You have to cut things for logistical purposes. Hunger Games follows.
Narratively.
I feel because you hold the integrity of the story with Hunger Games. There's still the adaptation stuff, and we're not going to talk about the cinematography there. Not yet. But for the story and adaptation, Hunger Games is third, followed by Mockingjay Part 2 and Ballad, because I'm not going to roast Ballad more. But Ballad
My bad.
is last.
My bad. I like the movie. Sue me. Sue
No,
me.
the movie's good. And it's fine that you liked it. It's a fun movie. It's just
Yeah.
not the most closely adapted to the book. That's all.
So that's adaptions, but is there anything throughout like all these films where like thematically it's lost, it's not present, where if it was present, that theme was there throughout the films or in a film that would have made a significant difference to the audience as a film goer?
So there are a couple things lost. One of the big themes that I've seen throughout the whole series is the concept of it takes a village. We see all the people that participate in the Hob in District 12. We find out that they were sending any extra funds that they had to sponsor Katniss in the games. They all worked with her. She hunted and traded with them on a regular basis. They wanted to help her in any way they could. We see everyone support her during the whipping situation. Everyone helps Gale go to Katniss's mom to get help. People are around the clock there helping each other in the community. And at the end of Mockingjay, Katniss is severely depressed. That's something that we miss, but we'll touch on that. Katniss is so depressed that she will not move out of a chair in the kitchen. She got home from the Capitol, released with restrictions that she stay put in District 12, and she contacts her therapist on a regular basis. And she's so depressed that Greasy Say, the person that in the first movie sold her the Mockingjay pen or gifted her the Mockingjay pen, she comes to the house twice a day to cook and clean for her and care for her until she is well enough to be on her own again. And we see this concept of it takes a village, and it is lost in the films, and it's not a high theme that we have here, like fight oppressors and be strong independent people and think for yourself. Those are too high and mighty and important for the films. We need those in the films. Unfortunately, It Takes a Village got left out, and these are sweet little tidbits that I really miss.
That's definitely something where they needed that level of humanity being shown in the films. Definitely would have invested you more within the districts. I mean, it shouldn't be that, plain and simple. It should just be that you see people and being, kind to each other in the worst possible place for themselves, which is life in the place that they're in, right? Which, I mean, there's a whole other conversation to be had about that. But, we talked about it before. That's why you should just make miniseries, and then you don't have to worry about this.
TV miniseries.
Bar for bar.
Highly
just
encourage
copy
that.
the book over to some extent. And then if you need to add something that helps, add, or subtract if you need to subtract, and just get her done.
I also wish that, like I said a minute ago, Katniss was severely depressed. She was suicidal. She knew that she would not survive the mission to kill Snow, and she had accepted that, and she was ready for it. She said, I just want to kill Snow to get revenge for what he did to Peeta and what he's done to everybody, and I'm not going to survive that. There's nothing left for me. And we don't see the level of depression, anxiety, and trauma. We get a bit of that, but we don't see the severity of it, especially after Prim dies. Katniss goes mute. She goes mute until she interacts with Snow, and he tells her that he did not kill her, and then she has to start considering what's true and what's not, and eventually she comes out of her depression after a trial. There's a freaking trial for her, but she's not present. She's just locked away the whole time. But you miss it, and it doesn't work for the films, and it makes sense. They probably don't want such heavy topics and such heavy emotions on a film that's supposed to be entertaining and fun and for teenagers. But this series is really important for introducing teenagers and young adults to these themes, and you miss it in the movies.
Yeah.
And I feel like the movies would be even more valuable with it if done right. Hence the miniseries that we need.
I mean, the back end of like Oppenheimer is just JFK, right? It's just a court case, right? Imagine that. That would actually be kind of cool for, Mockingjay. That's actually interesting. But that's pretty much all of it. All the conversation for it all. But that means that I need you to rank all these movies. You give me the juice. What is the best? Top to bottom. Give me actually bottom to top.
Based on what I like? Okay. I will not consider cinematography. I will not consider adaptation. I will only consider story, because story is what I really care about if we're thinking film. Bottom, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna put Ballad at the bottom, but I'm not as invested in that story, and it feels like there's still empty spots. Number 4 is part 2, Mockingjay part 2. It just doesn't have as much action. It was more boring than the others. Number 3 is part 1, because Mockingjay part 1 is good and it's very well done, but it's a part. It's not the whole thing. It's missing it. It's missing some of the actions, some of the climactic changes, the arcs. Number 2 is Hunger Games, because Hunger Games is the OG story. It has a beginning, middle, end. You get it all, but we're not there yet. That's the very beginning. And number 1 is Catching Fire, because Catching Fire, like I said earlier, is the beating heart of this series. You know the universe, but not entirely. You are in it, but still not entirely. But you get that romance, and you get that action, and you get to meet all these different characters, and you get to see loss on a different scale. And you just get a full story in that one. And it's also very well done. And I love Catching Fire. And that is my favorite book and movie of the series.
Okay, so if that's your favorite movie, then cinematically, what is it? Well, give me the ranking. Just don't give me any
I
reasons.
gave it number
Just,
1.
What's the rest? Because I'm about to get
Okay.
mine.
Okay, so bottom to
Bottom
top.
to top.
Okay, number 5's Hunger Games. The shaky
Okay.
cam, man.
Same.
The shaky
Same.
cam killed me.
Same.
Number 4 is Mockingjay Part 2.
Same.
Because while it's good, it's not as great. Number 3 is Mockingjay Part 1.
Same.
It just, progressively better. Number 2 is Ballad. Ballad is fantastically shot. It's beautiful. It's the story and the adaptation that kill it for me. But cinematically, fantastic. And number 1's Catching Fire. We got that freaking beautiful shot in Hawaii.
Literally.
We got that IMAX shit. We get everything in that one.
No, that's my favorite too.
It's so good.
And that's it. That's why we did Catching Fire, because Catching Fire is that juice. And I think it's just a beautiful movie that I really remember loving. And then I came back 10 years later after seeing it 2 times in 2013 and then rewatching it now, and it still holds up. And it's even more like emotionally like relevant to me now. And I always love to have that with, a movie that I rewatch. And I did get to see the last 2 Mockingjay Part 1 and 2 this year. And obviously I got something out of it. I had a good time with those. Enough of a good time with those. And I just want to end with the theme for me. The thing that really takes me home with what Collins was doing was that this is some hardcore vibes. It is extremely, extremely dark. But the scene that she ends with, the epilogue of Mockingjay, is Katniss is sitting under the tree that we see in Ballad later, where she's just sitting there with her practically newborn baby, watching Peeta and her son play together in this meadow. Practically feels like you're watching a scene from Gladiator. And she sits there and her baby starts to cry, and she tries to comfort her. And she says, "Oh, did you have a nightmare? I have nightmares too. Someday I'll explain it to you. Why they came, why they'll never go away. But I'll tell you how I survived. I make a list in my head, all the good things I've ever seen someone do. Every little thing I can remember. It's like a game. I do it over and over. A little tedious after all these years, but there are much worse games to play." And I think that's a lesson for life, is that for all the bar for bar bad things that are happening in this world, if I can remember and trust and hope that people like myself, and they are out there, they believe and they see the good within other people in this world, and we try to put that forth within ourselves, that it's an everyday thing we have to do, and it's better than the opposite. It's better than the other games of this world that we don't want to fall into. And I love that Suzanne Collins ends with that note. She has Lucy Gray Baird kind of bring it up too, and words to live by. Kat, you have any final thoughts?
The epilogue and the last few chapters of the book, and so the last 20 minutes of the movie, make me sob every time, because you are seeing them heal from all the trauma that they went through. And Katniss didn't want kids for about 15 years after the games. And then she finally said, "Okay, I think I'm ready. I think I want them." And it is just so emotional to say that this poor girl has been through so much. She went to an arena to kill other children with just to survive. She was in a rebellion in the face of it. She lost everyone she loved in one form or another, and she healed and she got through it. And it is very meaningful. And this is a very important story for people to read and for people to watch, because there is value in that message.
Yeah, I love it. And
I love it.
And with that, we're closing out pretty much 2023 with Catching Fire and this extended conversation about Hunger Games and why these sorts of stories can shine through even when you kind of don't expect them to. It feels like Suzanne Collins got away with, she kind of robbed the system, and I love that. She made a story about a rebellion, and she's a rebel herself in many ways. And it was a great conversation to have, and I feel like we'll have sort of these sorts of conversations ongoing with the podcast, depending on who we're talking about, what movies we're talking about. It's a great vibe.
Absolutely.
Kat, I loved having you on for this conversation. Obviously, you will be back soon enough. Our next pod, starting off the new year, and New Year's, quite literally, is Phantom Thread coming soon. Alrighty, guys. I'll see you next time. Lead with hope. Remember the good things that people do, because apparently we got worse games to play.
Happy holidays. Stay alive.
Happy holidays, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Cinema Pursuit. Cinema Pursuit is produced by Catie Nadell, Zach Nadell, and Vikash Patel. Special thanks to Cole Cooper for the intro and outro music. You can listen to Cinema Pursuit on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you may listen to podcasts. Follow us on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Cinema Pursuit Podcast, Twitter or X at Cin Pursuit Pod, and check out our subreddit, r/Cinema Pursuit.